Hi everyone, I'm going to show you a little toadstool today, in particular showing you how to set that forward against a background. So what I've done first of all is I've roughly drawn out a toadstool. So you've got to remember that you curve this bit round here so you get that nice overhang. I've got a little bit of a frill here, come down, and then I've got a bit of ground. Now you're going to have loads and loads of little white bits on this red toadstool, and you've got several ways of doing that. I am going to show you with some masking fluid, and I'm going to dot that on with my trusty knitting needle. So masking fluid is a latex solution that preserves the white of the paper. And it does ruin your brushes, so you have to be careful if you're using your brushes. Use a bit of soap with it first. That's why I tend to use a knitting needle or a colour shaper, and I'm just dotting this on. And I want this to be fairly random, and then I'm going to let that dry. If you didn't have masking fluid, not everybody does, you could use a bit of white gouache, you could use a white gel pen. So you don't have to have the masking fluid to do this. You would just put the white gouache or white gel pen on at the end. So there's lots and lots of lovely little dots there. I'll get a couple on the edges as well. And then once you've done that, it does just wipe off. So this is part of my beginners series. I use the same palette for my beginners series, which is this cotton palette. It's linked in the description. I've got two brushes, a round number 10 and a round number 6 that I'm using today. And this is a little bit of Saunders Waterford paper, 5 by 7 inches taped to a board, so it makes it easy for me. Okay, so I'm going to show you everything as I go through. I just need to make sure that the masking fluid is dried off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, and I'm going to start by putting a background wash on. So the key to this and creating a really nice toadstool at the front with lots of light is to think about your direction of your light. Now I am going to draw an arrow here. So my light is coming this way, and as I go through I will explain what I'm going to do with that light. So we have got my round number 10 coming on with a bit of water. I'm going to take the water around the toadstool. Nice and carefully. And get a nice even layer of water. So I have kept the ground light as well, so that's dry at the moment. It's just this background area, and I've got a nice sheen on there. Hopefully you can see that. No puddles, no dry bits on that background. I tend to often start with a bit of blue. I like to get a feel that there might be a bit of sky there, even if it's fairly low. So we're just bringing in a little bit of cerulean blue. Cobalt blue would work, ultramarine blue would work. I'm just using the colours that I have in this palette. So this colour now is sap green. So if you think about your complementary colours, green and red are a really good combination. So any green we put in now in this background is going to make the red stand forward. So this is a bit of sap green coming in. Bring that through. So I'm thinking foliage in the background, forest floor. So we might have a few trees coming up. And bring this all the way around the toadstool. I'm going to try and not say mushroom the whole time, but if I say mushroom, you know what I mean. It's a toadstool. I'm going to bring a little bit of something blue into that. So I'm going to go darker blue. I'm going to bring in a bit of ultramarine. It's just nice to have different tones within here. So I'm just dipping my brush into the water. This is my round number 10 still. I tend to use the same brush as much as possible. It makes it easier, and you're learning how to use these brushes. Part of this beginner series is all about using what you have and making it work. So I'm going to bring some of that dark around the edge of the mushroom and down onto the base. So I just want a jaggedy bottom there. Whatever colour I'm getting around this edge is going to help to define when it comes to the lighter areas. I'm going to come into some burnt umber as well. So we're going to pop some of that in. We'll keep this fairly low, but we will sweep some of it up. As if it was twiggy bits. Take a few little bits of dark just to accentuate. That's all helping. It's all still nice and wet here. Okay, what I've got now is a little bit of table salt. This is standard table salt. I'm going to pop some into my hand, and I'm just going to pop a little bit onto here because I want a bit of texture. That's just going to give a bit of texture to that, especially the top area. I want it to feel like there's more light there. Okay, so I'm going to let that one dry off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. Then what you can do is just rub that salt texture off. Just be careful you don't rub your masking fluid off at this stage. But I've got that nice little bit of glistening texture in there. Okay, so we're going to go onto this top of the toadstool. So I'm still using my round number 10. I'll pop the water on. If at any point you think, oh, this is too difficult, in fact, I'll swap down because I think you probably will swap to a number 6 at this point. Then come in with your number 6. Use the brush that you feel most comfortable with. You want the biggest brush you can use for that at that point. Okay, so this is alizarin crimson. So we're going to bring in a nice bold amount of alizarin crimson. So make sure that my brush is loaded with water before I've dipped into the paint. I just want you to come over it first of all. You've got that little bit of water, so it's going to flow quite nicely. Concentrate on controlling that tip of the brush so you're getting those nice lines. If you can see the tip of the brush, it's always helpful because you know where you're applying it. So you can twizzle your board round if that makes it easier. And then, so now we need to think about the direction of the light, and we want to pop some dark in. So if we go into the green, I've not rinsed my brush, and I'm going to come this side. So the light's coming this way, so it's going to shine on that side. And then I'm using my complementary colours, which is that little bit of green and the red mixing together is going to make a nice natural shadow colour. I'll get that nice shadow there, look. Then if you rinse your brush out, dry it off on some kitchen towel, and I want you to lift a little bit of light. So if it's damp, you'll be able to lift that bit of light out there. You see that little bit of light appearing there. Okay, so we'll let that one settle. Just rinse that red out of my brush. Okay, so now if we leave the frilly bit, but then come down to this area, which is the main stem, So I am going to use a little bit of cadmium yellow. If you had raw sienna or yellow ochre, that would work better. But I'm using what I have in this palette to show you that it will still work. So I kept it nice and watery. And then the complementary colour to yellow is purple. So you can make a purple. In fact, I've got a bit on the edge of the palette here, but I'll make something up. So I've got some rose. Oh, in fact, we'll use the alizarin crimson. Just going to pop it there. And a little bit of ultramarine blue. The alizarin crimson is what we've used in the pictures. That always creates a nice synergy. You see that tiny bit of purple there? I don't need a lot. So I'm going to dab that off, and then I'm going to come down this side and underneath the frill. So underneath the frill there'll be a bit of shadow, and this side there'll be a bit of shadow. If it doesn't spread well, then I want you to take a little bit more paint on the brush, not too wet, and just bring a little bit more of that yellow in, whichever yellow you've used. And you can see now that you're getting that shadow coming round. The same thing, rinse your brush off, dab it off, and then you can lift that little bit of light. So it's showing you how you're creating that light and dark side. Okay, I'll dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. So if we come on to this frilly bit now, that's underneath, so a little bit of water, and then it's the same colour, the cadmium yellow. Nice and pale, or your whatever colour yellow you're using. Then I'm going to come back into that purple mix. I'm going to come close to the edge of the mushroom toadstool. I told you I would call it a mushroom toadstool, and I want to get that dark really up at the top. So you want some down this side, but mainly up at the top. To make it darker, I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt umber on my brush. So that's just giving a nice contrast there. Rinse my brush off, dab it off, and you can just lift a little bit of light. You won't see as much light because it's underneath the top of the toadstool. Okay. And then we'll get a little bit of a surface down here. So I'm going to pop some water on. I'm going to go a little bit of burnt sienna. If you didn't have burnt sienna, you could still use a bit of raw sienna here, a bit of cadmium red. Just about getting a surface now. And then I'm going to come into that burnt umber again, because we want it to be quite brown. If you didn't have burnt umber, you could use sepia. If you didn't have sepia, you could use burnt sienna and ultramarine. I'm just bringing some of this in, but I want some of that burnt sienna to still show. So I'm just stroking this in to create some texture. Then just underneath the stem of the mushroom, I want to go nice and dark. So I'm dipping into the burnt umber, making sure that's nice and thick. And coming in, so that's going to give it a grounding. And then I want the shadow to come through. So that's the shadow from the stem, because the light's coming this way, the shadow goes this way. You can see that appearing. So it's now grounded. Simple as that, and it's standing forward really well. If I come into a little bit of the sap green, I'm just going to bring a few bits of the sap green through, just so it creates a bit more texture in that foreground. So I'm bringing it onto the softness of the wet, but then taking it into the dry. If I twizzle this way, going to do the same this side. So it could be bits of grasses, it could be bits of foliage. It's just giving a little bit more detail and depth in here. And you can bring some of that green through. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off and we'll rub the masking fluid off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, and then with 2 fingers, or you can use a masking fluid rubber, you can just rub. There's only a few dots on here and they should all just come off. And that's the white of the paper. If at this point you haven't used the masking fluid, then this is when you would use your white pen, or you could use some white gouache or even white acrylic ink, and that would bring those out as well. So I could continue with this, but I'm not going to, because I think simplicity is key when you're learning, and it's about building these up. So I'm going to take the tape off so you can see the final result. What I will do is, as part of my membership option, is offer a more complex tutorial using the toadstools. We're coming into autumn now, and it's really nice to do some autumn subjects. So if you're interested in that, you can always click the link to join. It's a really reasonable price at £5.99 a month, and there's quite a back catalogue of classes there now for you as well. So I will pop up another tutorial in a few days. I do 2 free tutorials a week, mainly aimed at beginners. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and comment for me, and I shall see you next time. Bye.